Welcome back. Michael Coren Show. Does God exist? One of those questions we sometimes come to every now and again, even on television. Does God exist?
Probably not.
Why? How?
Well, in my experience, I've never heard or seen of a single argument that would demonstrate necessarily that God exists. Right? I think there's a lot of speculation about sort of supernatural causes to the universe, that type of thing. But I don't see any necessary belief that we have to accept in the same way that we'd accept many other logical arguments.
Mm-hmm. What about what you heard for the first 7 minutes there?
Well, actually, I think there should be a distinction between one of the 5 arguments that you gave. One of them was the personal appreciation for God. So I think the distinction that Thomas Aquinas used between revealed theology and natural theology is important here. That we have to understand that perhaps people did have or do still have personal religious experiences, but we have to question whether or not that would be under the same frame of debate as talking about natural theology, which should be from first principles.
That's hardly the centre of Aquinas' writing, though, of course. I mean, that's marginal. He was really arguing from a very similar point of view as what we heard here. But putting aside any question of subjective feeling or personal experience, because by its nature, those can always be accepted or rejected. We heard arguments about, for example, the origin of the Earth. Accidentality simply doesn't explain. An acceptance, perhaps, of an evolutionary pattern, but there had to be some sort of imagination, design, initially.
Why?
You tell me.
Well, I don't see any reason why we'd assume that there had to be an intelligent force behind that. I think it's really up to Dr. Craig to explain to us why that is a necessary truth, not for me to defend why.
Well, I can give him more time, but then people will write in and say, oh, you gave him too much time.
Okay, well, I'll address what other people have often said, which is that because the universe seems to be set up for us to exist. Is this correct? Is this about what you think?
That is fine-tuned for intelligent life.
Okay, well,
Whether
again,
us
I
or
think,
others.
well, okay. Then whatever life would exist out of randomness, whatever intelligent life would exist out of randomness, I think that there's an important point about evolution which is being made here, right? Which is that, of course, evolved systems had to come about in this system, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. Also, that there's a pretty strong intuition for us to believe that we have a central role in the universe, right? I think it was Wittgenstein was very key on this point, where he was once asked, he was once told by someone, how ridiculous was it when people thought that the sun revolved around the earth? And he asked, well, how would it look if the earth revolved around the sun? That is how it looks, right? So I think the same questions is very pertinent here. How would it look if it were random, right? It seems to me that it would look very much like the Earth we inhabit and the universe that we see today.
Interesting you quote Wittgenstein, actually. I would have thought he'd probably have a little bit more sympathy with this side than yours.
Well, he was definitely a Catholic.
Well, he was Jewish, actually, but he moved through to Catholicism. Yeah. I'm trying to give you as much opportunity as possible. I'm not hearing... I heard a concrete argument here, and I want to give you the opportunity to respond in some form. Let me be more broad in the question. Give me the brief thesis as to why we should not believe in God.
Well, why we shouldn't believe in God really depends on what you mean by belief. Whether or not we should accept the arguments really has to do with whether they correspond with the facts.
Well, there can be no absolute certainty that there isn't or there is. I mean, obviously, you're an intelligent man. You would never say atheist. I mean, atheism is rationally impossible. You can strongly doubt. You can strongly believe. If there was absolute proof, then God wouldn't be loving. He wouldn't give us freedom. There has to be that room and not to believe. You have to want to find him.
Right.
But so why, speaking to viewers out there, hundreds of thousands of people watching, why would you say to them, God is irrelevant, don't bother?
Well, I would say that it's more important actually for them to examine the reasons why they would believe in God, right? I'd actually think that that's really the first step, is to appreciate the role of skepticism and the role of taking arguments seriously and investigating them to the best of their abilities. I think that would likely lead to atheism. I don't think that it's necessary for people to have arguments for being atheists, rather that they should come to the conclusion that makes the most sense to them.
Why?
Because, well, otherwise then you're deluding yourself. If you're not actually thinking about what you believe, and I don't think any Christian would agree that you should believe it, or that you should believe in something simply because it was told to you. You should investigate it. I just think that that would lead to someone to be an atheist.
We seem to be going around in circles here. But the reason we're having the debate is, does God exist? So obviously, it's a self-evident truth that I believe in debate on these issues.
Right.
I want you to tell people why they shouldn't believe, if you want to use the semantics, why they shouldn't imagine there's a God. Show me how there's no God. Give me proof that God doesn't exist.
Well, we can't prove a negative. I think that's why we're going around in circles. Like, I can't prove the non-existence of
Give
anything.
me an argument.
An argument, I think actually it was one that wasn't fully addressed by Dr. Craig.
Yeah.
The argument, I think, is the argument from evil, right? I have tended away from it in the past, but I do think it attacks something that's very central to the Christian doctrine, which is the actual nature of God, right? Whether or not they can be actually all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful at the same time. Now, this argument has changed a lot from its original conception about, like, 1,600 years ago, right? And we have to be careful of how we take that argument to be. But what we do see, I think, is that it is incompatible to believe that there is genuine evil in the world, that we can believe in a being that is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good. Now, what theists tend to do is to attack this idea of evil and say that it's, well, not really evil, right? And that it's actually just in light of some greater good. Now, I think that that's actually a very problematic position to take, because what you're doing actually is you're not giving an objective morality, right? What you're doing actually is to be basically an apologist for whatever God happens to do, right?
See, I have to say, the only people I have heard who say there is genuine evil are, as you say, theists, because, for example, there's no evil in the animal kingdom. People kill for food. There's some mild torture, a cat with a mouse, but overwhelmingly there's no ethnic cleansing or genocide. It's simply need. But there is evil within humanity, and the theists would say we have souls, but there is a spiritual war going on. It's been actually atheists who've said to me, there are bad people, there's no supernatural evil.
Well, it depends on what you mean by a supernatural evil. Certainly not, like, I wouldn't hold the position that there's some evil force in the world, or there's such a thing as the devil, or like, that to me I think is ludicrous. But I think there are genuine arguments for why things are ethically bad, and if that's what you mean by evil, if that's what you take to mean by evil, then there are certainly reasons why we'd have an objectively unethical behavior. Right?
But not with animals, only with people.
Well, it depends on the level of cognition that we're attributing to animals, right? Whether or not they can be moral agents, as well as moral objects.
Does an animal ever kill merely for the sport of it?
We see in chimpanzees, actually, that there is this sort of behavior.
What do they go for? What part of the anatomy do they attack first?
Actually, from my knowledge, it was the testicles.
Yes, they do, because they're trying to stop their opponents from breeding. It's meant to be a selfish act. It's not meant to be evil. It's not meant to be Satan. It's meant to be, I must stop you winning in the end. However, plenty of time to go in the debate. Back in a few moments on monkey testes. See you soon.